Recently, I made a retrospective that has inspired me to talk about Star Wars Battlefront. No, not Star Wars Battlefront, I mean Star Wars Battlefront. Man, this naming scheme is almost as bad as Mortal Kombat. Almost. The Battlefront franchise is beloved by Star Wars fans, and it all started with the first game's release back in 2004. While 2 is historically the fan favorite, there are several aspects of the first entry that people seem to love more than its sequels. The appeal of Star Wars Battlefront is the game's ability to place you in a galaxy far, far away and make you feel like you're a soldier fighting boots on the ground. And outside of the gameplay, the biggest factor that makes this fantasy possible are the battlefronts themselves. There are 17 maps in the original Star Wars Battlefront. I know, I could have sworn there was more too. But there is one map in this game that stands out above the rest. In fact, it's likely the map you thought of when I first mentioned the concept. And that is Bespin platforms. Bespin platforms is synonymous with the game, if you ask me. As soon as you boot up instant action, it's the first option available to you. It's impossible to play this game without the map crossing your mind. I'd go so far as to say it is the two-fort of Battlefront. I've always thought of this as at least a top 5 maps in the series, but in my mind, it is the best map in the original Battlefront game. Now, in a recent Knights of the Old Republic video, I talked about what I believe the difference is between calling something the best and calling something your favorite. If something is your favorite, well, that's subjective. Everyone likes what they like, just give me a reason why you like that thing. But for something to be the best, you need to explain yourself just a little bit more. Why do you think this is better than everything else? I also then proceeded to call that video the best side quest, even though it's just my favorite. Listen, clickbaiting is real and I am a scumbag. But I do think that Battlefront's Bespin platforms is the best map in the game. However, it has been quite a long time since I've actually played it, especially with a critical eye. So that is the goal of today's video, to see how Bespin platforms holds up. Is it just an iconic locale that is remembered fondly, or is it truly the best map in Star Wars Battlefront? If we're going to see how this map measures up, then we need to at least have some sort of criteria to compare it to. So let's use Platonic idealism to create the perfect level. In a broad sense, the perfect map is going to have, I think, 3 main parts to it. An environment that makes you feel like you're in the middle of a massive battle, multiple ways to take part in said battle, and lastly, the map has to make you feel like you're at a location from Star Wars. To be honest, it's hard to say exactly what elements come together to make a great Battlefront map, but I think these cover the broad strokes at the very least. And one last thing of note, while getting footage for this video, I played both the original Xbox version of the game as well as the Classic Collection version. Because Lord knows I need to justify this purchase somehow. So if you notice any visual differences between the footage, that is why. Now, let's get into the map itself. There are 2 central platforms with several smaller areas jutting off to make up each half of the map. The 2 bases, the command and control command post, are linked by a bridge, in the middle of which is a third area with an uncontested point to capture. Each half of the map seems pretty even in terms of landmass, but there are certainly differences. The northern portion has less platforms, however 2 of them are substantially larger, accommodating for bigger ships, whereas the bottom area has more platforms but they're smaller, with only a single large landing pad available. The map is asymmetrical, but it's asymmetrical in the way that your face is asymmetrical. Sure, the 2 halves aren't identical, but they are balanced. No one is going to take a look at this map and say, oh look, this side has an advantage. Generally speaking, everyone will agree that both sides are equal at the start of this conflict, which then draws your mind to the single neutral area on the map. When starting a match, what you'll most likely do is spawn at your team's respective central platform, and then start making your way towards the extractor, as it is called. It's a quiet walk. You won't run into any enemies, and your allies will run alongside you, almost making a wave of soldiers. There's a certain confidence that can be felt in this moment of peace. But, as anyone who's played this map will tell you, that peace doesn't last. The extractor is the location where these two waves finally crash against each other. And let me tell you, they crash hard. Whichever team takes control first places a lot of pressure on their opponents, because now they have a staging area and can start pushing into the other side of the map. Pretty much 90% of the fighting that happens during a match is going to be contained to this stretch of platforms. If it's not on the extractor itself, it's going to be on the bridges connecting it. Now, Star Wars has a long history of hallways being a very deadly place. But before Luke, Maul, and Vader, there was Bespin platforms. So much carnage can be wrought in this relatively thin expanse because there's really nowhere else to go. The map naturally funnels everyone on the ground into combat within these hallways, where the battle then becomes a tug of war. The bridges are covered with windows set along the sides and a few little juts that can provide some measure of cover. There are multiple ways to fight along these bridges that allow several different classes to shine in different ways. The standard infantry unit is the most ideal class for this environment, but they're also the most ideal class for every environment. I mean, seriously, there's being well-rounded, and then there's being the Battlefront infantry unit, who is so well-rounded he outclasses units within their own speciality. But I digress. His rifle excels at any range, letting you get some early long-distance kills due to the accuracy of his first couple of bolts, before continuing to keep the pressure up at close range. The sniper is another class whose skill set plays into the design of the bridge quite well. Once again, you can consistently get long-range kills, and once an opponent steps into the hallway, they really don't have many escape options. The small amount of cover can pose a problem, but there's only so much of it. Plus, a well-placed grenade from any class is going to flush them out, or end the fight right then and there. But even outside of the hallway, the sniper can just skip the bridge entirely and start shooting directly across to the other platform. Enemy snipers tend to set up along the open air, as well as a few other units waiting their turn to enter the tunnel, providing you with a veritable shooting gallery. It's also a lot of fun to watch the AI units try to roll and escape from sniper fire, only to then go straight off the edge of the platform into the abyss below. And who can forget the sniper's orbital strike, which can be used near the start of a bridge to cause massive damage to anyone unlucky enough to be in the area. Even units who struggle to consistently do well have a chance to shine here on the platforms. The heavy unit comes equipped with an amazing secondary in the form of landmines. Place some of these along the bridge and you're guaranteed to get some kills. So long as you don't kill yourself in the process. The slow-firing rocket launcher too can be effectively used due to the narrow confines of the hall. If the weapon had just a bit more splash damage, I'd dare to say it's the best option when fighting here. The shotgun weapons wielded by rebel pilots and dark troopers also have their moment to shine within the confines. However, other pilot weapons such as the arc thrower or mortar launchers don't really perform as well due to their slower and less consistent rate of fire. Now, the jet and jump packs of the special classes also allow you to get on top of the bridge. In fact, a boost isn't even required, as a well-placed jump can get almost every unit on top of the bridge found on this map. This opens up a whole world of flanking options, or can even offer a safer route for you and your recon droid. The windows add yet another layer, allowing you to shoot either into the bridge from the outside or shoot out towards the platforms while still inside. But let's step away from the meat grinder real quick and talk about the other major way you can join the battle, in the sky. Bespin is one of the few maps that allows for starfighters. But while most only offer a few ships, and even then it may not always be an equal number of ships between the sides, Platforms has every playable ship in each era spawn in, and in a greater number than seen anywhere else. It's the closest thing to a space battle you'll get in this game, especially considering the whole map is floating in the atmosphere of a gas giant with no bottom. Now each side has a standard starfighter and a heavy starfighter option, with the Clone Wars era having dropships while the Galactic Civil War has bombers. These ships are scattered along the secondary platforms, using the backline command posts to spawn you near them. Now, I do have a few things to say about spawns later on, but one thing I noticed is that there was a few times that when choosing a pilot class and spawning in at one of these command posts, I always seemed to spawn right on top of a platform housing a starfighter. Perhaps it's intentional, but most likely it was just a consistent coincidence. You could end up at any number of places spawning in here. Now, flying can be a fun alternative to the admittedly hectic ground combat found on this map. The area offers a lot of freedom, especially due to the lack of any real ground. I also want to take a minute to point out the visuals. The skybox shows the classic sunset seen on the clouds of Bespin throughout Empire Strikes Back, and you can even see the city itself floating in the background. Now, while the map certainly looks good for 2004 standards, I will say there were a few times when the skybox textures seemed a bit muddy and unevenly fit together. However, when I booted up the Classic Collection version of the map, I was frankly blown away with the visuals. I do know this remaster uses a lot of AI upscaling on the skyboxes to try and make them look better. And while it doesn't look great on every map, going straight from the original to this was frankly jarring. It was so detailed and gorgeous to look at. Admittedly, maybe unnaturally gorgeous. Likely a result of the uncanny nature of AI. But in the moment, it felt like an improvement and added a wonder to flying around. The only problem is that starfighters in this game don't quite have the same survivability they do in future installments. Time to kill is short, so if you're caught unawares by an accurate pilot, then you'll quickly find yourself back at the spawn point. Also, colliding with another fighter deals a lot of damage, but also seems to be a bit inconsistent, with me somehow surviving a collision with a comparable ship, yet exploding when my brand new gunship is lightly clipped by a much smaller vulture droid. Now, there is another way to fight off starships even from the ground. All throughout the landing pads, as well as the central towers, anti-air cannons can be found. By hopping into one, you can now shoot your enemies down without ever taking to the sky. They deal high and fast damage, at the cost of being stationary and sometimes having limited turning. If you don't want to get into dogfights all match, another way is to use the ship to fly over to the enemy's landing pads and try to capture those command posts. Now this poses its own risk, as now you have to survive not only enemy fighters, but enemy AA guns. However, if you do manage to make it, you now have a chance to cut off and flank the enemy team. That is assuming you don't lose the command post. It is easy to leave it undefended since you likely will be capturing it by yourself. While back there you might also see some good old classic Battlefront nonsense along the way. I mean, what am I even looking at here? But as I said before, a large part of the appeal for Battlefront is the ability to transport you into the Star Wars galaxy. Many maps manage to accurately recreate movie locales, or at least create an environment heavily inspired by something seen. Bespin Platforms, however, is not based directly off of any location seen in the films. But despite this, the area feels right at home in the Star Wars universe. And, while not actually being from Empire Strikes Back, it manages to perfectly represent Bespin. What do you think of when you think of this planet? You think of floating in the clouds. You think of the orange haze of a sunset. You think of starships flying through the sky. All the famous aspects of Cloud City are on display without this location actually being based on anything. But what exactly are these platforms? Well, based on context clues, I feel it's pretty easy to conclude. For the longest time, I thought it was just a mining rig, due to Tabana gas mining being the primary export of Cloud City as stated in the films. Upon returning for this video, however, I did think of an alternative idea. Look at the names of each command post. The outer pads are called Depot, Fuel, Dock, Landing. The two central towers are called Command and Control, and their interior shows several computer screens and terminals. To me, it seems as if this whole area could almost be some kind of an airport. The platforms are just that, landing platforms used for refueling and maintenance. The central towers are air traffic control stations used to monitor inbound and outbound flights. Now, while that is a neat idea, The fact that the central platform is called Extractor and features several pipes and silos definitely gives far more credence to the idea that, yeah, this is a mining platform. Now, as I start my concluding thoughts, there are a few other odds and ends I wanted to point out. Like I said before, spawning can be a bit weird all over this map. Each of the starting command posts seems to have a wide range of points that you could potentially spawn at. With most maps, command points will roughly start you exactly where it shows you. However, I often found myself spawning pretty far away from the point from time to time here. In addition to each faction's vehicles, cloud cars can spawn in as a flyable option. Although, when I first tried to hop into one, yeah, I have no idea what just happened. The two towers on the map are not an exact match to one another, with commands doorways leading straight towards the bridges, while controls doors are located on its sides. This also means the gun emplacements on the second levels are swiveled, with commands guns pointing to the right and left. Meanwhile, control has one gun on the front and one on the back. While this offers advantages and disadvantages to both, it does let players in the control tower aim their AA cannons towards the extractor. It's a great strategy to get some kills, so long as you don't mind friendly casualties as well. You can also take a ramp to the top of the extractor. It provides a wonderful view of the whole map and the struggle scene in the sky, while also doubling as quite the effective sniper nest. And of course, how could I not mention this? Bespin Platforms is the poster child for killing hero units. By using a heavy unit or honestly any type of explosion, you can effectively juggle an enemy hero over the edge of the platforms. Heck, I even got an achievement for it in the Classic Collection. So after taking all of this into account, what are we left with? Well, the answer is we're left with a map that has left a major impact on every player who's played this game. A map that offers a great deal of good, but also might host a few problems underneath the surface. Starting off, the combat is solid, offering several ways to engage. You can fight on the ground, take to the sky, or even fight ground to air. The only real combat option missing is ground vehicles, like tanks. But of course, this map wouldn't really benefit from having an AAT rolling around, nor could it really accommodate one. The hallways are hectic and constantly a staging ground, offering an experience that is consistent without being repetitive. You can shoot, snipe, throw grenades, launch missiles. You can jump straight in or hang back and pick off whoever you want. You can ambush from both sides of the windows or crawl across the roof. You can push forward or dig in and make a stand. Another benefit is how the hallway can give the illusion of a much bigger battle. Realistically, there's only ever going to be 15 to 20 units on the bridge at a time, but due to the low life expectancy and nearby respawn points, the battle feels massive and unending. Then of course there's flight, which can be just as quick and dangerous and offer a much needed break. The opportunity to fly so many ships or to man a cannon offers a combat loop unique from any other map in the game. The ability to go where you want also lets you take more of a sabotorial role and disrupt the enemy backlines. And due to the lack of space missions, this is the closest you're going to get to a classic Star Wars starfighter battle. However, while both of these options are on display, one of them is clearly more impactful. Each time I did choose to play as a pilot, I found my ground forces losing more and more men to the meat grinder. I could never get enough kills in a starship to make up for the kills I could be getting at the extractor, because there's only so many pilots flying around at a time. Strafing runs weren't really an option either because, again, everyone is deceptively indoors and safe. And then going back to the bridge, certain units certainly thrive there better than others. The sniper is a fantastic choice, and an example of a balanced option. But then there's the droideka. Now in fairness, the droideka is broken no matter where he is in this game, but on Bespin specifically, he thrives. With the narrow confines of the hallway, the high rate of fire, and the low time to kill, the droideka dominates at any difficulty. It is hard for the clones to effectively fight back, especially when two destroyers side by side virtually blocks the entire hall. But that being said, isn't that hectic nature of the map also what makes it stick out in our minds? Back when I played this level during my campaign video, I joked how Bespin platforms was like walking on the Normandy beach. But isn't it this dangerous, adrenaline-pumping aspect what makes us remember the platforms? And the comparison is apt because it ironically is situated similar to a World War battlefield, down to having a no man's land in the center. It's a struggle that often feels like a stalemate, and that's what makes pushing forward feel so rewarding. Every time I manage to make it to the other side of the bridge, I feel accomplished. Now, I typically don't live long over there, but it shows that I managed to push my enemies, be they rebels, Imperial, clone, or droid, back, and I am the one approaching victory. That, I think, is the strength of Bespin platforms. It is one of the most dangerous and deadly battlefronts in this game, and it's for that very reason we find ourselves returning to it. But ironically, this strength can become a weakness, with virtually all the fighting being on this bridge, effectively nullifying every other gameplay style in the name of victory. Still, it's not like those other options don't exist. You can play offensively in a starfighter, or defensively in a turret. You can sneak behind or push ahead. You can make the battlefront your own. That is why, while maybe not truly perfect, Bespin Platforms stands out as perhaps the best example of a Star Wars Battlefront map. Do you agree with my takes? Is there another map you think is better? What about your personal favorite? And heck, if this video does well, I may even consider checking out other maps in Battlefront games. But for now, take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.